Well, hey guys, Shanna Kramer here with Creatively Uncorked, and I'm bringing you this week's CreativeBoxLIVE painting. Today we have Hungry Little Fish. Isn't that cute? This is great painting for kids, adults, beginners. If you've been painting a while, you're just going to have such an easy time with this one. So the techniques now that we're going to learn today are going to be simple shapes, some nice little circles, some nice little fish shapes, nice little S shape there on that hook. And we've got some shading and some highlights. And all of these fish you can see are different colors, and each of them are going to have different color highlights, different color shadows. Let's get started. So hopefully you have your canvas all sketched out by now. And if you ordered your supplies from Creatively Uncorked in your CreativeBoxLIVE, these are the brushes that you would have gotten. We've been sending out these flats, these larger flats, for the last couple of months because they're a little sturdier and will last a little longer than the brushes that we've been sending previously. We're going to use probably the bigger brush and maybe this one, maybe all three of these. But you're also going to need, from your previous boxes, you're going to need a small round brush. Okay, and that's just for the little bit of details, and no problem. If you have a different brush laying around, use that instead. Our basic colors that we have this month are going to be white, black, yellow, red, blue. Just our basics. And these basics are really my favorites. I mean, if I'm just gonna grab and go and paint something, this is it. This is what I use, the primaries. Primaries plus black and white, because you really can't go wrong. And we don't need black yet, so I'll just leave that one off. The only thing we're using black for is the hook, and that's just a minor detail. Okay, so we do have this trick that we've been doing the last many paintings. Often we do this, is if you want to make sure you see your lines later, retrace them with Sharpie. I am going to, instead of tracing with Sharpie, I'm going to color block. Color blocking, if you remember, is painting color where color goes. So I'm not painting the entire background all the way through. I'm only painting the water blue. Okay? Simple, simple, easy peasy. I'm taking my pretty darn good size big brush here. This is a 1-inch flat, although your biggest brush is going to be just fine. Little white, little blue. Don't overmix. If you overmix, take a look up at the original here. You've got this nice streaky blue background, and you can't get those nice fun streaks if you overmix. So just pick up both colors. Hi, Irie. This is my studio assistant, Irie. You can't walk on paintings, babe. My little 4-legged assistant here. Isn't she adorable? So when we get up to the fish, you just want to paint right around them. Yep, just trying to keep the fuzzball out of the paint here. Yep, I've been out of town for, a while. I've been on vacation, so I've only been home a couple of days in the last 2 weeks, and my lovely little assistant here, she's been missing me, so she's gonna probably do her best to get in every video today. That's okay. All right, so I'm just going to go, not necessarily really top to bottom, although that would be a good way to do it. And I'm just going to cover up some of these fins because I know I can redraw them. And if you trace your fins with Sharpie, you're golden. You're going to be able to see them. Okay, keep right on going here. And I'm just trying to do vertical strokes, so if I have to go around fish and it makes it a little crooked, then I'll just come back and do more vertical strokes over that. Could you use a smaller brush for this? Yeah, of course, but I always like to use the biggest brush possible for any task. They hold more paint, they get the job done quicker. Also, it looks a little better. There, I'm just going to paint right over that worm. Too much detail for me to worry about. So here's another pro tip. If you did not trace with a Sharpie, which you should, then what I did here was just add a touch of water to that paint to thin it out. and then I can see through it. So now some of these fish that I'm painting right over, if they need to be a lighter color later, like this little guy up here who's yellow, I'm going to have to repaint part of him white just to make sure that that yellow shows. Because if you try to paint yellow over blue, what happens? Turns green. It won't turn light yellow. Okay, adding a touch of water to my paint again. There we are. Another way to do this is to start with a blank canvas, paint your background, then trace your sketch, draw your fish, and if you're drawing these fish freehand, you can. It's pretty simple. Simple shapes. One of our things we're going to learn this week, right? Simple shapes. And fish are mostly just a couple of shapes. Look at those little round eyes. Okay, so there I have my background. At this point, this is where we would take a break, let this dry. I am going to go ahead and blow dry mine. So if you want to hit that pause button and just wait for yours to dry and then come back and hit play again when you're ready, I'm just going to blow dry this and meet you back here soon. All right, dry enough. Looks like we are good to go and get ready for our next few steps. Now you remember, like here, I was saying that this needs to be light. So we are going to go ahead and make that white again. Okay, taking a smaller brush, and this is my smallest flat brush that I have here. Just dunk it in the water, and I'm coming over to the white paint, pick up some white paint, and then I'm just going to go add a few touches to that fish just to brighten it back up. There, I'll lighten up those fins again so those will show. Easy peasy. All right. Adjust the tail if you need to as well. And let's see here. So this fish over here is going to be red. And I think I'm not going to need to make any adjustments to this one because where it needs to be bright red is already white. So that's going to be fine. The shadows we would be mixing with blue anyway. So this one guy down here is green. We can lighten that up a little. Let's see, his fins, I'll just pop over to the original quick. So his fins are going to be, on the bottom are going to be dark, and his tail is going to be light. All right, well that's pretty easy, isn't it? So I'm just gonna lighten up that tail a little. Okay. And I know he's got some fins on the bottom, but I'm not going to worry about those. All right, what else? Now we have this little orange guy down here. He looks pretty okay, actually. Maybe I don't need to mess with it. Let's brighten it up a little. The tail, how's the tail looking? Yeah, we don't need to worry about the tail. How about that purple fish? That big purple fish. That's a mighty nice looking fish, isn't it? That, I believe, is going to, well, it was kind of painted to look like an angelfish. If you've ever seen an angelfish, they're like flat discs with really tall fins. The freshwater angelfish, anyway. There's also a saltwater angelfish. Doesn't look quite like this, but interesting anyhow. Okay, just making sure that one's got that flat disc shape. And I'll let the tail go. Okay, so I think we are pretty much set here. So the next thing I want to do is to go ahead and paint the worm, which seems weird, I know, but we'll paint the worm now and then we can paint the hook through it when the worm is dry. So what color is the worm? Well, let's have a look. This worm here is kind of a tan, kind of an orangey color. So to get that color, and don't forget you do have in your box this handy dandy color mixing chart. So we're looking for something between this and this. Okay, and if we go with brown, then we just have yellow, red, and blue. Of course, we're going to add white to that as well. And the orange is going to be red and yellow. So just based on this, we can assume that our colors are going to be red, yellow, tiny, tiny, tiny little dot of blue, and some white. So let's start there. Okay, take a tiny little dot of red, tiny little dot of yellow, give them a mix up. Okay, that's already too red, so I'm going to take a little more yellow. Take a scoop of white, and now this white has some blue in it because I scooped it right out of the dirty white. So let's just mix it in. I may not need to add more blue than this, but I may. Okay, how's that looking? Not quite right. I guess we're going to need more blue. And when you're using blue, add the tiniest little small amount, because blue is a very powerful color and it will overtake the other two colors very quickly. How's this looking? What I'm doing here is I'm holding it up by the original up in the corner just to see the difference in the colors. So this one needs a little more red, a little more red, a little more white. And if it seems like I'm making a lot of color right now for this worm, I am. That is way more than I'm going to need for the worm. That's okay. I'm going to be mixing up colors for this whole thing. All right, so when we're working with our colors red, yellow, and blue are transparent, which means that any color underneath them will show through, while my black and white are opaque, meaning that you cannot see through them. So if I want to mix a color that you can't see through, I have to use either black or white in the mix. And this one, of course, we added white, so this should be opaque. Opaque enough to cover the background anyhow. All right, so I'm going to leave the worm like that for now. As you can see, it does have some highlights, it does have some texture, some shadows, but that's for later. Right now we're just color blocking, just adding that color. All right, speaking of color blocking, what color do you want to start with? Red? Yeah, let's do red. All right, so I'm rinsing out that brush really well, and if you are not able to get all of the paint out of your brush, try this. Press the brush all the way to the bottom of the cup, give it a good swish, and then you can wipe the brush on the paper towel, and that will show you if you have any paint left in the brush. If you do, rinse it again. Oh, hi, Fluffy. Yeah, here's Irie again, inspecting the paint. Yeah, okay, there. I make up her own bed for her so she can sit right next to me. Yeah, it's not always working, but that's okay. She'll get it figured out. On to the red. So I'm still using that smaller flat brush. And hi, baby. Yeah, can't walk on here. Just going right up to that red fish, and I'm just going to go ahead and color that all in, tail and everything. What do you think, Irie? Are we doing a good job? Cute little furry purr baby. Well, how do you like that? Distractions and all. Still able to paint the fish in. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and paint the fins as well. So there's a little boop, boop. Those are the two fins on the back of the fish. And because I'm painting over the blue, it looks like it's already a shadow, right? Magic. And then the big fins, boop, boop. There they are. Again, looking pretty fantastic. All right, so now we'll move on from that fish. There is going to be another fin on that one, but we can't add it now. How about the green one? Nice. All right, so what color is green? Handy dandy color mixing chart. So we've got a couple of options. We've got yellow and blue. We don't have teal today. We just have yellow and blue. So we can use yellow and blue to make green, and then we can add a little bit of white to it to lighten it up. So here's my little hairy blue. It's got cat hair in it. Oh man. All right. Way more yellow than blue because that blue is powerful. Take some white, scoop up some white and mix it in there. One other tip when you're scooping up colors to mix with other colors, don't scoop from the middle, scoop from the edge. Try to keep your main paint pile as clean as you can. Okay, so now we're down to this little green fish here. And I'm just coloring it all in. Color blocking, I'll say. It's kind of like coloring. It's exactly like coloring. You're just doing it with a paintbrush is all. So I'm just filling in this fish with some of that nice green paint. Filling it in solid. And then I'll come back later with the lights and the darks and make those adjustments. Okay, how about the yellow fish? Okay, so yellow fish right up here. Just taking some yellow because I've got the background basically light enough now, I think, right? Oh, nope, not quite. You're still seeing a lot of blue spots through it. So you know how to fix that? Add white to it. I'll just get it all filled in here real quick, just so it's the right color at least. Okay, now I'll try mixing some white with my yellow. And this will thicken it up and make it opaque. So you aren't going to see all those lines through it. Okay, there we are. Might need a second coat, so we'll just keep an eye on it. While that's drying, we'll move on and paint the next one. So how about this purple fish? This purple fish, remember purple is going to be red, blue equals purple. We'll just add some white to it to lighten it up and to make it opaque. So taking a little bit of blue, not too much blue, a little bit of red, a little more red than blue. Mix those colors together. And once you get a nice purple, then you can just go to the white, scoop up some white, mix it in. And now you've got a lighter purple that will cover up the background. Because of the white, it's now opaque. There we are. Give it a good blend. And just go ahead and fill in that little disc shape of that angelfish. Alright, got the body filled in. Adding a touch more white to that, and then I'll fill in those fins. Got a big old tall fin on top. And Same thing on the bottom, big old tall fin on the bottom. And let's not forget that tail. They have a big tall tail. And there we go. Go ahead and make sure your fish is all filled in. All right, so now we have backgrounds of all of our fish except that orange guy. So let's go ahead and fill in that orange. How do you make orange? Yep. Red, yellow. We'll make orange, and then we'll just add a touch of white to it to brighten it up. So I'm taking a scoop of yellow, moving it over, taking a tiny little dot of red, mixing it in. A little more yellow. Okay, and then add some white to that. And my white and my yellow are both a little dirty, so I'll just get a little slight color variance here, and I'm not worried about it. It's still going to be mostly orange, so. Go ahead and fill in that orange fish. Now in this part, we are probably not going to have to take a break to let it dry. I mean, you can take a break if you want to. Just go ahead and pause, come back when you're ready. But this paint should be drying as we work. So by the time we're done with this orange fish, we should be able to go back up to that red fish and continue working on it. All right, so now we've got the orange background of that fish. All right, so if we wanted to take a break, this is a perfect time for a break. Otherwise, I'm going to take a look at the original over here and see what needs to be done next. I think all of the eyes can be painted white. And then we can start adding some shadow. So let's go ahead and work on those eyes, get them all painted white. Rinsing that brush again. Oh, I'm a little troublemaker. Okay, that is pretty good on the eyes. Okay, let's take a look at what kind of shadows we need. So that worm there, he's got a little bit of detail, and basically those lines on the worm, those are going to be dark orange. And do you know what color dark orange is? Yep, it's blue. So I'll keep going here with my flat brush, my tiny flat brush. And if you need to switch to a very small round for this, I totally get it. But I don't think it should be necessary. I feel like it's often easier to use the flat brush than the round. Okay, so I'm taking a little bit of blue, adding it to my worm color. All right, so now I have a shadow worm color. And where does that go? A couple of lines here, a couple of lines there. All right. Got a shadowy line right down at the bottom. Oh, let's do more blue than that. That should be darker. Okay. Oh. Be sure to keep your fingers out of the wet paint. All right, now I'm just going to load up this flat brush with paint, and I'm just going to tap a couple of spots. Tap, tap, tap. Those are my little worm stripes. Touch of water in that to keep it flowing more smoothly. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. Okay, there we go. Now our worm has stripes. We can even do some deeper shadows by adding some more blue. Okay. All right, enough on that. We'll add the highlights later. We've got the shadows. What other shadows can we add right now? Let's see. Let's take a look at the fish. So the red fish up there has a shadow color that's going to be purple. So the purple is going to be red plus blue. We've got a little bit of that already. So we've got kind of the tail shadows, kind of the fin shadows. And if you don't have that, go ahead and do that now. So I'll just switch to my tiny round brush here. Touch of water. And then I'll pick up some blue, some red. I'm keeping that right next to the purple that I've previously mixed up because it's going to be pretty close, slightly darker. Okay, and with my red and my blue, I'm going to add a gill, little fin, and shadow along the bottom. So right along the whole belly of that fish, plus on those bottom fins, that's where the shadow is going to go. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Check out that tail. See what you want to add to the tail. If you want to add a little texture to it with the purple, you might. Or any of the top fins if you want to add anything there. And around that eye, I know we just put white there, but if you go around the white part of the eye, you can add a nice little shadow to that eye. Looking pretty good. All right, let's move on. So now let's go to, how about this green guy? Let's see what we have for shadows and highlights. So for the shadows, we're going to be adding a more blue to that green, just to darken it up. Highlight, we'll just add white to the green. So let's just keep in mind that we need to make two colors from our green. So one of them is going to be more blue, so I'll just mix in a little more blue over here. Just one little spot of that green. I'm just going to mix some dark blue in. Okay, and then once I have that, then I can just come over to this fish. I can add those little bit of shadows to the green fish. I can add some texture to the tail, add a gill, color in those fins. And I'm going to add a bit of a shadow to the bottom of the eye. And anywhere else you might need shadow. I think that's pretty good. I think we'll stop there. But maybe we also want to do a highlight at the same time. So I'll just take a little scoop of white, bring it over to my same green pile, and put some of that white in some of the green that I didn't use with the blue. Okay, so now I've got a light color. I'll go along the top of that fish. And along the top of that fin, and a little bit on the tail. There we go. We got some pretty good highlights and shadows on that guy. Figured we might as well do that while the paint is still wet on our plate, while this green is still wet. Otherwise we'll be mixing up more in just a little while here. All right, now we have, let's do the yellow guy. So the yellow shadows, let's take a look. The yellow shadows, we mixed yellow and red and white to get that orange. So now we're going to add yellow, or yeah, we're going to add orange here for the shadows of the, we're going to add orange as a shadow to the yellow. So for that, we're just going to mix up yellow, little tiny bit of red, and some white, and that will be our shadow color for the yellow. And we already have a little bit of yellow or orange mixed up here because we used it on the orange fish. So nice and easy. So now we can go right along the bottom of that fish. We'll even add some more yellow to it. And this is going to be our fish shadow. A little bit of shadow right under the eye. Don't forget the gill. And the fins. How's that looking? I think we need a little darker down here. Well, I think that's looking pretty okay. How about the highlights? Should we do some highlights on that fish? What the heck? Let's just scoop up some white. A little tiny bit of white over here. Make sure I get enough white in the eye there. Along the top of the fins, I'm just putting white directly over the yellow. That's what I'm doing for my yellow highlight. I'm not going to mix white and yellow because it's a mix of white and yellow that makes up the color of the fish. There we are. So now we've got the yellow highlights on there. I'll maybe even put a highlight on the top of that fin. Isn't that cute? All right, moving on. Let's take a look at the next two fish. So the purple fish is very similar, as the shadows are also purple with a hint of blue. So a little bit more blue than what we used previously, and definitely less white. So I think if we just mix up purple without white, I think that's going to be a good shadow color for that purple fish. Okay, so I've got a little of that color mixed up, and I'll just go right along the bottom of that fish. Right along the bottom of that eye. There's a gill. And on that tail, we'll just add a little bit of a shadow and some texture to that tail. How's that looking? Looking like it needs some highlights. Rinsing that brush back out again. And this time I'll take some white and mix it with that light purple. Hopefully that light purple is still a little bit wet. If not, just add a lot of white to the purple that you just made. There. Oh, more white. Doesn't stand out enough. I want that highlight to shine. There we are. Put some on that tail. Maybe even above the eye. Just a little touch. How's that? And this is your fish. You add as much or as little detail as you want. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call that one good and move on to the orange fish. The orange fish is going to have, remember what dark orange is? Dark orange is orange mixed with blue. So that's what we're going to use for our shadow color. And then the highlight is going to be nice and easy, yellow-white. So let's try a dark orange. If you still have an orange mixed up, go ahead and use that. Just mixing up slightly more. Orange, once again, is going to be red, yellow. And then I'll just add a touch of blue to that to darken it up. That's going to be my dark orange. Well, that's a mighty dark orange, isn't it? Nice and dark. Adding that same color again. Just go ahead and reload your brush whenever you need to, and you'll probably need to a lot. It's a tiny brush. Tiny brushes don't hold a lot of paint. And we'll add a little fin to that guy. Lovely. What do you think? Gorgeous. Okay, wiping that extra paint out of the brush, rinsing out that brush. And I'm coming back up here to the highlight color, which I'll just use yellow and white. I don't think we need much for red. Mostly white, hint of yellow. I'll go right along the top of that fish. Do we call this a goldfish because it's orange? Maybe. If we want to, we'll call it a goldfish. All right, now I got some highlights, we got some shadows. Now, where else do we need some highlights? We need some highlights on this red guy. So I'm going to show you a trick. If you mix white with red, you're going to get pink. This isn't a pink fish. This is a red fish. So what I'm going to do is mix white and yellow. It's pretty much the same highlight color as this orange fish. And then I'm just going to add a couple of little highlight spots. Pretty intense right now, right? Don't you worry about that. Nope. We'll get it fixed. Okay? We're just adding that for now. Let's just let it be. When it's dry, we can come back and put red over it, and it'll be a bright, bright red. So let's move on and add some highlights to that worm. Okay, so I'll take some white. I don't think I have any, well, this was my worm color, but let's just use white. Just right along the edge, right along the shiny parts of the worm, right? Which worms are pretty much shiny. Okay, so we'll let that go there. And while we're waiting for this to dry, we have a couple of details that we'll work on next. If you want to take another break, now would be a good time to take a second break. Just go ahead and hit pause, come back when you're ready. And then when you're ready to continue on, we are going to add the hook, the line, we'll add the eyes to the fish. I think I'll start with the eyes. So I still have my small brush and blue paint, just plain blue paint. Okay, now I want to make sure my little fishies are all looking at that worm. So when I fill in the pupils or fill in those eyes right there, I want to make sure they're kind of pointed toward the worm. Because all the little hungry fishies are interested in that worm. There, and this was still a little bit, the white was still a little bit wet, so I just had to glob on that blue extra thick. There. Okay, so now all my hungry little fishies are looking at that worm hungrily. All right, so now we can get started on that worm. Now that worm, that is the one thing on this entire painting that uses any black at all. So I'll just take a little dot of black. Little dot of black. Not much at all. Again, rinsing out my brush, still using that little small brush. And because the black is always thicker than our other colors, I'm just going to thin it out with a small amount of water. Mix it really well. You don't want any globs in it. All right. So all I'm doing is just mixing a small amount of water with that black. Again, be careful to not stick your hand in wet paint. Alrighty, I see one mistake already that I just made. So you be careful when you're making your hook because it should not be covering up this part of the worm. If you accidentally covered it up, take a damp brush, just lift that paint off very quickly before it dries. See, I don't really have worm color left, so there. Okay, letting that go. All right, now back to that hook again. It's got to have a hook on it, right? Some hooks look just like that. Some hooks look like this. All right. So while you could wait a little while, or you could just go right into the white, add the highlight. I'm just going to go right into the white. Just going to add a little boop, shiny part right there. A little shiny part right there. There we are. All right, so now we've got some shiny parts on that hook. Isn't that cute? Now, one big main thing that we have left is going to be our line. Okay, so if you're better at drawing lines upside down, do that. An even easier way would be to use a Sharpie. Just draw it on there. Draw it on there with a marker when you're done painting. All right, so how's our little fishies looking? Do we think we need to add any more details or changes or anything like that? Let's see, we have that red highlight we can deal with, so I'll just take a little bit of watery red and just go right over the top of that highlight. There. Do we need to add any more highlights to that worm, do you think? It's looking kind of dull. It's kind of the star of the show. All right, how about this yellow fish up here? I'm thinking he could use a little bit more shadow. So back to the orange color, yellow and red, mixing it kind of thinned out there. And it could use some depth, like, let's see. Color the fins up there a little bit better. I think I'll go almost all the way around the eye with that shadow. There, that'll help the eye to stand out. And I think already that's helped a lot. Okay, what do you think? Any other touches before we call it quits? I think this is looking pretty good right here. Don't forget to add your signature. Maybe you want different color fish. You go ahead and paint them any color that you want. And I hope you had fun. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.